This is the highlights from the consumer behavior course that I've taught at University of San Diego. So let's talk about consumer behavior, and you see your definition there. But really the question that we want to start out is asking ourselves, why do we buy things? Why do we buy things that, frankly, we don't need? We don't really need much to get along in this world. And if you remember at the very beginning of this course, in my very first lecture, I introduced you to Prahlad Jani on the left of your slide there, who's a breatharian, which is a Hindu practice of some devout Hindus live on breath alone and they don't eat. And there's been some science substantiating this. Now, whether his claims of never eating for 70 years are valid or not remains to be determined, but it does strike a chord in getting us to think about how little we actually do need to get by in this world. So why do we adorn our lives with all of these things? Are we being sold a bunch of stuff that we don't need, or do we actually need these things? And here we enter the realm of consumer behavior. And the goal here as marketers is to get into the psychology of why people buy things and use these powers to help us get them to buy our things. Your next learning objective has to do with the concept of motivation and drive. So motivation is how charged up are we to pursue something. Perhaps you spend a bunch of time making yourself look and smell good to go out on a first date with somebody, right? You're very motivated. You want this person to like you. And part of the underpinning of that motivation has to do with your current state and your goal state. Think about pursuing a college degree. You might be dissatisfied with your lot in life and your current career, and common complaint is I want to make more money, or I want to have a job that has more meaning, more responsibility, and uses my brain. So you're here at a dead-end job, and you want to be here at a job that has meaning and income that are at higher levels, right? And the bigger that gap is between I'm here and I want to be here, the more dissatisfied you are. That creates tension, and that tension is transferred into motivation. So motivation is goal-oriented, wanting to change your situation. And we've all been in those situations. Think of how productive you are right before you're getting ready to go on vacation, and you're at work and you're still getting tasked with things to do, and how hyper productive you are clearing your calendar and delegating work and doing everything you need to do to make sure that you can clear your calendar for that vacation, because you have a high degree of motivation and your goal state up here, going to that beautiful trip to Hawaii or whatever, is high. So drive is really the level of urgency that's created by how much tension you have, dissatisfaction with the gap between where you're at and where you want to be. The gap can also work in reverse, where you were at and you're dropped down to a new low current state. That can be if you had a great job and you got fired, and now your income's gone down and your life circumstances have gone down. Once again, you have a big gap. So, but drive is internally generated. It doesn't come from us as marketers influencing you directly. And that brings us to your next learning objective, this concept of drive theory versus expectancy theory. So drive theory is internal. Drive theory is the process you go through that says, if I do this, I will get this. So this helps reduce my tension accordingly. So for example, a lot of people wake up and they go to Starbucks and they get a cup of coffee first thing in the morning. Why? Because it reduces their tension. So I have this drive, I need something to wake up, and when I get my cup of coffee, it reduces that tension, right? Or I have to check my phone first thing when I wake up in the morning. Why? Because I wake up and if I don't check my phone, it creates tension. You know, extreme examples would be if somebody's addicted to drugs. If I don't take this drug, I'm going to have a bunch of tension, right? So I'm not talking about prescription stuff that is needed medically, but where somebody feels a strong need that they have to reduce their tension if they don't get this thing, okay? So that's drive theory. And it's the desire to reduce the tension of not having. So, food advertising oftentimes will move towards this drive theory. The expectancy theory, and I may have misquoted that a little bit at the beginning of this slide. The expectancy theory is, if I do this, I will get that. So, for example, you see an ad there from Axe deodorant, which is encouraging men to use this deodorant, and if you spray more of the Axe deodorant, you're going to get more women, get more dates, kind of stuff, right? So spray more, get more. So expecting a desirable outcome from certain behaviors. If I do this, I will get that. All right, so your next learning objective is the difference between needs versus wants and understanding that difference. So needs are a motivation, and how strong is that motivation to satisfy a drive. That can be a baseline Maslow's hierarchy of needs need, like physiological, food, rest, thirst, sex. That'd be a baseline hierarchy of need. But then you move up to safety, and then kind of some self-esteem and self-actualization needs go up from there. So, but how strong is the motivation to satisfy that drive? So that's a need. A want is the direction of the motivation, and this is where marketing steps in. So how is the consumer going to reduce that drive, that tension? You're hungry and you haven't eaten and you want some food. My sons would tell me, "Dad, we need In-N-Out." And I would say, "No, sons, you want In-N-Out." And they would always get upset at me. So marketing is trying to influence that need and make it specific that the consumer is going to want your product. So what gets us to want one product to satisfy a need versus another product to satisfy that need? Now that want is shaped by personal factors, many of them cultural, so the way your family was, et cetera, et cetera. So your reference groups and people that you hang out with, all of that can impact the direction of your motivation to having a specific want. I want a Chevy truck. I only drive Chevys, versus just a need for a new truck, right? Let's talk about utilitarian versus hedonic needs. So we're talking about some specific types of needs here. So utilitarian, just think practical needs. So I need a laptop that has this kind of features, or I need a car that has this type of miles per gallon. And the factors that are influencing my purchase decision, my needs that I need satisfied, are utilitarian needs, practical needs, right? And we like to think that we're always practical in our purchase patterns, but it's not true. And it's the whole reason why there's gossip magazines at the checkout counter at the grocery stores, and also candy, because we don't always operate off of utilitarian need satisfying behaviors. Sometimes we're also hedonic, like hedonism. So the need for things like excitement and fantasy and escape. I want to go out this weekend and drink a lot and go to a rave or some other kind of show and escape for a while, right? So that's why people go on vacation, is they're trying to satisfy those hedonic needs. So as marketers, we need to understand what type of product are we selling, and if we're selling a luxury getaway to Bali, we're probably not going to be focusing heavily on the pragmatic needs of comparing prices versus other travel destinations and having, very practical and analytical reasons why this is a good deal. No, as marketers, we're going to be focusing on the hedonic values that are going to motivate someone to satisfy that need, because that's why they want to go to Bali in the first place. Consumer behavior is a process We have pre-purchase evaluation, and then the actual purchase process, and then a post-purchase evaluation process continues. We need to understand what are the specific wants and needs that we're satisfying for these different consumer segments. What motivates them to buy a product? What's the need that they need to satisfy in the first place, and how can we insert our product in there as a salve to satisfy that need? And people buy things for a lot of different reasons. It's very complex, the way we adorn our lives and the roles that we play and the images that we create for ourselves, and the products that we use and adorn our lives with are central to that. And another thing with item 5 here is that we're living in a new environment now where with technology we are always on. We all have our cell phones at all times, and they're always on, and we're checking them. And we can look anything up. If we need to know something, we can do a Google search. If we want to find a place to eat, we can instantly look at Yelp. And if we want to go out on a date, we can swipe left and swipe right. So we're in our social media sites. We're constantly preening our image and sending pictures of the good meals that we're eating on Instagram. So this always-on consumer is creating some new needs where people are actually, I think we're going to see people are trying to unplug. So that's it for this first lecture. Thank you so much. We have one more on consumer behavior with your lecture number 2.